Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 RSM Classic Initial Research Show. We have reached the final event of the 2024 PGA Tour season. It has been quite a year. Would love to hear how you all have done for the entirety of the year, plus how you did for the Bermuda Championship. We have everything that we normally cover in an initial research show. We're going to take a look at the field. We're going to take a look at the course, a little bit of info about it, and we've got a lot to cover. But I'm coming off of a decent week. Although Justin Lauer would have been nice to get across the finish line for an outright wager, but not to be. But we're here for the final event, and it's a bit melancholy for me, just because we're going to be without golf, or at least PGA Tour golf, for a little over a month now. There are a couple tournaments over on DraftKings and other sites, I'm sure, that for the Grant Thornton, Hero World. I don't participate in those, but we're here for the RSM. And everything for the final PGA Tour event of the year. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I post research every Monday regarding some patterns of the previous winners of the weekly tournament. So be on the lookout tomorrow over on X, especially for some historical patterns from past champions of the RSM, the patterns that they all share, and the players in the field this week who also fit those patterns. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. It's a wonderful way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you with his own version of research throughout the week. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS talk over there. It's very entertaining, very informative. I've enjoyed working with Gabe now for quite a while. And speaking of that, we are going to be putting together some content together. So be on the lookout for that. And that's going to start this week with the RSM. So you really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to his article. Make sure you're doing that and show him some support. Follow him over on social media. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all in addition to how the Bermuda was. Did you have Rafael Campos, somebody that I have talked about numerous times on this channel, and he finally comes through. So did you have Rafael Campos? How was your DFS? How's your 2024 been in general? With PGA or any other endeavor in terms of wagers or DFS. This is a time to reflect and look back and see how our 2024 was, especially with the PGA. But if you want to shout out any other success you had, feel free to jump in chat with that. And then moving forward for the week, how much do you know of Sea Island, the Seaside course, and the Plantation course? This is a tournament that has a 2-course rota. So players will alternate playing courses between Thursday and Friday, between the main Seaside course and the alternate Plantation course. How much do you know of the property? Who do you think is your early favorite this week? I would love to hear from you. Also, feel free to jump in chat when I hear from the community this week. So let's get into it. Let's do our initial research for the 2024 RSM Classic. And we start, as we always do, on a Sunday evening over at the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. And we'll have 2 pages to cover. Really, we're wanting to really cover Seaside, which is the main course here, as players will alternate between the Seaside and the Plantation course on Thursday and Friday. Anybody who makes the cut will be playing just Seaside on Saturday and Sunday. So if you want to think about The setup is very similar to, say, the Farmers Insurance out at Torrey Pines, where Torrey Pines North and South is used, but once the cut happens, only Torrey Pines South is played. A couple other tournaments have very similar setups. So Seaside and and Sea Island Resort, the main course that is used for the tournament was a Harry Colt and Charles Allison design, renovated by Fazio in 1999. There's not been very many significant changes to the course since then, so this has been a very consistent course on the PGA Tour. Seaside itself is a pretty short par 70, just over 7,000 yards. A traditional par 70, 4 par 3s, 2 par 5s, lots and lots of par 4s. Seaside itself, the greens are pretty darn large, 7,200 square feet, sits right on the coast of Sea Island, down there in Georgia, St. Simon's Island, Georgia, right on the coast. You see the acres of fairway is only 25. That is pretty darn misleading, considering how short the course is, excuse me. Pretty misleading considering the fairway widths in the landing areas is about 47 yards. So pretty darn wide and generous fairways, but they are undulating. There are some slopes that to navigate around Seaside, and there's a lot of forced layups as well, or at least dog legs, where most often players are choosing to lay up, but you do have the option to cut corners. See Ludwig Ober last year. So don't get carried away by the small number of acreage and fairways. These fairways are pretty darn wide and forgiving. Not a whole lot of bunkers, at least on Seaside. But the main defense, as you can expect with a coastal course, albeit wind, and there's a lot of water in play. 13 holes with water in play over at the Seaside course. The greens are TifEagle Bermuda, which we were on last week down in Bermuda. So we're going to be taking a look at the same courses. Port Royal, Bay Hill, Kapalua, of course RSM. This TifEagle Bermuda, it was a bigger factor last week in Bermuda because we didn't get any strokes gained data from there, from the Bermuda Championship. So that's why I wanted to really take a look at TifEagle Bermuda specifically. Now that we have some data for the RSM, we'll be able to gather and see just how much putting matters this week. But we are on the same exact surface of greens, this TifEagle Bermuda. Fairways and rough are perennial rye overseed, and Gabe has a pretty good write-up in his article this week on the grass types that is prevalent at Sea Island. A quick note that they're going to move to Paspalum in 2026, so we're not going to be worrying about that. But there's a look at Seaside in a quick look, and this is the course we're going to mainly focus on, since 3 of the 4 rounds for the players who are contending for the win are going to be playing this course. To take a quick gander at the Plantation course. The Plantation course is part of the same property. It is more inland, so a little bit more tree-lined, much more protected from the coastal winds that hit St. Simon's Island. This is a Walter Travis design, but renovated by Davis Love in 2019. He did a lot of work on the greens here on the Plantation course, as the Plantation course used to have Paspalum greens in addition to the fairways, but Davis Love came in, renovated it, converted them to the same TifEagle Bermuda. The Plantation course is a very short par 72, traditional par 72, 4 par 3s, 4 par 5s, very short, almost the same length as the Seaside course, as a par 72 instead of a par 70. Now, few key differences here. The greens are only average in size as opposed to fairly large. There's a whole lot of bunkers on the plantation course. That was the main defense of the plantation course, whereas Seaside can use the coastal winds and the water. The plantation being a little bit more inland, a lot of bunkers come into play. Lots of fairway, lots of forgiving fairway. 10 holes with water still in play. And of course, on Tiff Eagle Bermuda, like at Seaside. So there's a look at the two courses that are in play or going to be played this week in St. Simon's Island for the RSM Classic. We will move to Fantasy National and take a quick look at the players in the field this week. Our defending champion is Ludwig Aubert. He came here last year and blitzed the field on Saturday and Sunday, shooting a 61 on both Saturday and Sunday to win by several shots, I believe. The RSM won by 4 over Mackenzie Hughes, who is also back. This is the lowest score since 2014. I believe the lowest score in history at the RSM. Aubert just blitzed this place. It was in good form as well, but really played well here. If we take a look at some of the bigger names in the field, this is maybe, other than the Shriners, the biggest event in terms of the fall. You get a lot of professional PGA players that reside on St. Simon's Island and make permanent residency there. Players such as Brian Harmon are in the field. Ludwig Aubert, although I don't think he's a permanent resident, he's here. Harris English. Several pretty big name players and major champions generally make the trek here to the RSM, especially since it is the last chance for a PGA Tour event. So if we take a look at least last chance at the PGA Tour event for the calendar year, I should say. So if we take a look at the last couple of months, again, just this focus on the fall portion of the schedule, back to the Pro Core. Your top players in the field this week: Lucas Glover, Joe Highsmith, Patton Kazire, Doug Gim, Wesley Bryan, who's been fantastic the past 2 or 3 tournaments, Mackenzie Hughes, your runner-up last year, Grayson Sigg, JJ Spawn, Matty Schmidt, and JT Poston. Now, again, one of the reasons why someone like Ludwig Aubert isn't up here, they haven't played this fall. Players like Ludwig Aubert, where did he just go? Aubert, Denny McCarthy is in the field. Sepp Straka is in the field. So in fact, if we sort on number of rounds and make it 0, this might be easier. Brian Harmon, who hasn't played this fall. I mentioned McCarthy, Sepp Straka. Trying to come a little bit further down. Yeah, that's about the main, the biggest names there. So quite a few names here this week at the RSM. Of course, Aubert being 5th in the OWGR. There's several that are ranking from in between 20 and 50 in the OWGR. So fairly solid tournament this week. So let's move to the course breakdown here at Fantasy National. Again, we're just going to focus on the Seaside course for this week. We're not going to worry about the plantation. When I make my mixed condition model, I'm pretty confident that I can include both courses, or at least include the one round of plantation into the calculations for the tournament this week. So we're just going to focus on Seaside. Seaside itself has a couple of decent scoring opportunities, but it can play pretty difficult depending on the wind. With only 2 par 5s, those are your best scoring opportunities. The par 5 on the back, playing more than a half a shot under par. You see 4.5% eagle rate. Every single player on the PGA Tour can reach this green in 2. barring significant wind. So very, very easy hole there. And then the front 9 par 5 plays a little bit longer at 582. Still plays to a quarter of a shot over par, or excuse me, quarter of a shot under par. Not as many eagles as you can see. A little bit more of a positional style hole. Plenty of birdies, but not a whole lot of eagles. But what you don't see on the other end of the spectrum are a lot of extremely difficult holes. The most difficult hole here at Seaside is the par 4 14th, only playing a 10th of a shot over par. But what you have are a bunch of holes where bogey creeps into play. The second and third most difficult holes, also 10th of a shot over par, 500ths, and then you quickly get into par. So there are some bogeys to be had, very few doubles. But there are a few bogeys to be had around Seaside if a player isn't careful. But a lot of decent scoring opportunities. The short par 4 8th, playing almost 2/10 of a shot under par. A 10th of a shot under par for both the 5th and the 6th par 4s. Or excuse me, no, par 4 5th and then the par 3 6th. There are 2 decent par 3 scoring opportunities. The first being the par 3 6th, and then the other is the par 3 17th. And then there are 2 pretty long par 3s that play pretty difficult. The par 4 13th on the back, par 3 12th. 223 plays to 500ths of a shot over par. And then the second most difficult hole on the course, par 3 third at 204, plays to a 10th of a shot. So you have 2 par 4s, or gosh dang it, 2 par 3s that are pretty difficult, 2 par 3s that are decent scoring opportunities, and then the 2 par 5s are easy, quite taken advantage of here at the RSM. Seemingly not having had ShotLink for about a month now. I know it hadn't been that long, but not having ShotLink for a while, it is nice to come back stateside and get some data that we can look at. So for your strokes gained by shot type, for your top 10s, you can see approach and putting, and putting is a pretty big deal, at least for our top 10s. Off the tee is fairly significantly outweighing around the green, which leads to about an even split in terms of ball striking and short game. If we move to top 5s, approach and putting still doing their main thing. Off the tee, starting to distance itself from the around the green a little bit. And for our winners, around the green, probably, I would guess, would be the par 5s. Players are, attacking those par 5s in 2. Or in the case of Ludwig Ober last year, I know he was driving the sharp dogleg par 4 8th at 368. He was trying to drive that green, and then around the green really came into play for there. But you can see, let's not get too carried away here. The main thing is putting. This often can turn into a putting contest, just because some of the scoring here is pretty easy if the winds lay down. Most often, winners here are right around the -20 mark. Sometimes they'll be a little better than -20. Sometimes they're a little worse, depending on the wind. Of course, what we saw last year from Ludwig Ober, almost getting to -30. So putting is a pretty big deal here at Seaside. If we take a look at strokes gained by hole by par, with the enormous amount of par 4s here, 12 par 4s at Seaside, you would think that they're going to have some increased weight, and you can see that here with only 2 par 5s for professionals to take advantage of. Par 4s are where it's at. For the top 10s, we move to the top 5s, and then for the winners, par 4s are hanging right there with the par 5s. So once we go to the data dive tomorrow and really take a strong look in some course detail data around Seaside, we'll probably see that the par 4s are carrying some significant weight. And the par 5s might have a little bit of a deflated value just because there's only 2 of them here at Seaside. We move to the whole composition chart, which again, Fantasy National is not loading that. So we'll take a quick look here on per the scorecard. Your par threes, two shorter ones, or at least mid-length par of threes, two between 175 and 200, and then two between 200 and 225, at least on the scorecard, 204, and then the very long 223. So pretty an even split of par threes from 175 to 225 to under 200 to over 200. Your par fours, you have the what normally shouldn't be drivable, but for the biggest of big hitters like Ludwig Aubert, like a Luke List, players of that ilk, a Rory if he were to play here, those players can drive this green, but it really isn't designed to be. So one short par 4 under 400, but the majority of your par 4s fall between 400 and 450, 417, 415, 429, 409. There's 4 already. 418, 425. There's 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of the 12 par 4s fall between 400 and 450, and then there are 2 that are over 450. One's at 452, so you can easily see that coming down under 450 on certain days. And then the final par 4 18th at 470, pretty well locked into that range. So there's a look at the whole composition. Your 2 par 5s, both between 550 and 600. Approach shot distribution, again, despite the length of the course or the lack thereof, there are quite a few longer approaches because of some of these forced dog legs and forced layups. So several approach shots coming between 150 to 175, almost a quarter of them, and then several from 125 to 150 as well. Even though we have a bunch of shorter par 4s, players are having to hit certain spots on the course to give themselves the best angle of approach to hit these greens. Even though they are large, they are undulating, they are sloping, they're generally pretty darn fast. Players are pretty conscious about being underneath the hole to give themselves the best chance at a look at birdie. So a few longer approaches than what you might think for a very short course. Historic cut line, you can see in its infancy, was a pretty average difficulty tournament. You know, right around even par, maybe even played a little over par, but has since gotten pretty darn easy. Players are generally, I wouldn't say overpowering this course, although Ludwig Aubert certainly overpowered this course last year. But they are definitely playing Seaside and Plantation very, very well. -7 in 2022, -6 last year, generally between this -4 and -6 range. So we're looking at a pretty darn easy cut at the very least. And you can see that here with scoring distribution, almost 20% birdies and only 12% bogeys. There are a lot of pars around Seaside, especially. Quite a few birdies over at Plantation. But generally a lot more scores under par than over par, which leads to it being fairly easy. Driving accuracy at Seaside, pretty darn easy. And a lot of this is course architecture, course design. Again, with those sharp dog legs, forced layups, players are hitting less than driver on majority of these tee boxes and just finding the fairway. So 70% accuracy versus a 61 at the average tour event. So a lot of players are just clubbing down and finding the fairway. Greens, again, at Seaside, these greens are large, so very easy to hit these greens. So it's not going to be a whole lot to look at just hitting greens this week. Players are going to have to have some pretty good proximity, be in the right spots on these greens, as there is some, as I mentioned, some undulations, some tearing, shelving, and players can be left in the wrong part of the green and really, really struggle to putt if they leave themselves in the wrong position. Scrambling, about tour average. And then 3 putts per round. a little bit higher here. That's probably because of the fact that these are a lot faster than what players have been playing, especially at the Worldwide Technologies, at the Bermuda Championship. Those greens are very, very slow, and these are pretty darn fast. So that might cause it. Hey, Complex, thanks for jumping in chat. I don't know how long that comment's been sitting there, but it's good to see you this evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. I hope you had a successful Bermuda Championship and that you're ready for, unfortunately, the final event on the PGA Tour for the 2024 PGA Tour season. But thanks for jumping in chat. It's good to see you this evening. I hope your 2024 has went very, very well with PGA and any other wager or DFS endeavor that you have taken on. But good to see you this evening. To wrap up, a look at Seaside. Driving distance, again, as I was mentioning with the dog legs and the forced layups, a lot of lack of distance here. Players are not hitting driver off these tees. They're just clubbing down, finding the fairway, which is leaving themselves with those more mid-length approaches. And then proximity, a lot closer here, which leads to easier scoring. Even though these greens are large, pretty easy. You get professionals with scoring clubs in their hand. They're generally going to hit it close. So there's a look at Seaside in terms of a scorecard and graphical view. We'll go back. Actually, before we go back to the players in the field this week, let's take a quick look at the historic conditions for the RSM. You can see the Plantation, both rounds last year were very easy. Now, Seaside played difficult because the wind was, the wind had picked up a little bit. And the Plantation course is protected from that wind a little bit because it's much more tree-lined. It's much more inland than Seaside. Seaside is right up against the coast. So it has no protection against any wind, which is some of the main defense of the course. It got difficult in round one last year and then played extremely easy for the rest of it as the wind died down. Again, when the winds pick up, this place can be difficult. It can be difficult. But generally speaking, you're looking at a pretty easy course. And we'll take a look at the wind tomorrow to begin the Data Dive show, as we always do. But there's a look at some of the historic conditions. Of course, we're on Bermuda greens. The greens are generally pretty darn soft and receptive. But you can see that last year, they were lightning fast. Generally kept at fast. But they've had a few rounds of lightning. So they can speed these greens up. So as we move to the players in the field this week, one of the first things that we're going to do, we'll take a look at short courses, just because both the Plantation and Seaside are both extremely short. So in the past 2 years, or 36 rounds, your top performers on short courses in the field this week: Ludwig Aubert, Denny McCarthy, Keith Mitchell, Brian Harmon, JJ Spawn, Ryo Hitsatsune, Chris Kirk, Eric Cole, Ben Griffin, and Adam Svensson. And then if we take a look at easy, I'm going to default to easy until we see the forecast tomorrow. Until I look at the forecast tomorrow. Haven't looked at the forecast yet. So when rounds have been easy relative to par the past couple of years, your top performers in the field this week: Davis Thompson, Ludwig Aubert, Doug Gim, Ben Griffin, Ryo Hitsatsune, Hayden Springer, Matt McNeely, Luke Clanton, JJ Spawn, and Patrick Rogers. Let's take a quick look at some approach and putting. Some approach and putting data, 36, last 2 months. So your top approach players in the FedEx Fall. So going back to the Pro Core, your top approach players in the field this week: Lucas Glover, Doug Gim, Gary Woodland, Mackenzie Hughes, Michael Kim, Lee Hodges, Ben Coles, Mac Meisner, Nick Hardy, and Chris Kirk. I'm going to click on Glover here just to see if Fantasy National is loaded in the Bermuda, and it has not. Not that it would have changed anything on this page, because we don't get strokes gained data from the Bermuda. It was more out of curiosity for, par fours and good drives gained, things of that nature, which we'll cover tomorrow, and it'll be in Fantasy National by tomorrow. There's just more curiosity on my end. But there's your top approach players in the fall. Again, don't ignore players such as Ludwig Aubert, Brian Harmon, Siwoo Kim, Denny McCarthy. They just haven't played in the fall. I've just been doing this for the past couple of tournaments now that we have enough rounds of players that have been playing in the fall. And then lastly, we're just going to look at Fast and Lightning Bermuda. And once I do my research tomorrow and post it to social media, I might take a look at Tiff Eagle Bermuda. But tonight, I think it's just fine that we look at some Fast and Lightning Bermuda greens. So in the past couple of years, on Fast and Lightning Bermuda greens, your top putters have been Taylor Montgomery, Chad Ramey, Anders Albertson, Andrew Putnam, Ben Griffin, Matt McNeely, Sam Ryder, Justin Suh, Brendan Todd, Taylor Moore, and David Skins. Those are your top putters on Fast and Lightning Bermuda. The only other thing I think I want to cover in any kind of detail would be par 4s, 400, 450, because there's so many of them here. So in the 2024 calendar year, in the 2024 season, your top par 4 performers from 400 to 450 yards have been Justin Lauer, Andrew Putnam, Davis Thompson, Ryo Hitsatsune, Roger Sloan, Zach Blair, Matt Kuchar, Adam Svensson, Grayson Sigg, and Taylor Montgomery. With that, we will clear those. I'll take us back to the strokes gained in case there are some questions. And we're going to check out this tournament history tab. And again, this tournament has been very consistent on the PGA Tour, has held its spot as the final event in the calendar year for a while now. So we can go back all 5 years and see just who has played the best around Seaside or Sea Island. Of course, our defending champion, Ludwig Aubert, down here, he missed the cut in his first try and then wins. The year before that, Adam Svensson had missed the cut and then wins. He did have a top 5 last year as well, so he's played very well. Your strokes gained total leader is Mackenzie Hughes, but take a look, he's got 2 runner-ups and 2 missed cuts. So there isn't a whole lot of prior success mandating future results, I guess is the best way to put that. As Mackenzie Hughes, very, very boomer bust here at Sea Island. Denny McCarthy has been a little bit more consistent. He still has a missed cut, but 3 top 10s, including a top 5, 1 missed cut. Tyler Duncan, a win, a 3rd, and 3 missed cuts. So again, one of these examples of very, very volatile high performance or missed cuts. Some other players that have played fairly well here: Matthew Neesmith, Webb Simpson. I mentioned Webb Simpson last week on short positional courses like Wyndham and Sedgefield. You always got to think about that, and that is certainly what Sea Island is short and positional. So no surprise to see Webb Simpson has played pretty well here. Not necessarily the past couple of years, but historically has been pretty good here. Brendan Todd makes a lot of sense. He is a Georgia native, I believe a St. Simon's Island native as well. Seamus Power has played very well here. Will Gordon, 3 for 4. Adam Long, who I believe is an alternate at the moment, but has played very well, so be aware of him if he's in the field. JJ Spawn has gotten continuously better. in the past 5 years. Missed the cut way back in 2019, and then made the cut to a poor performance, and then 3 straight top 20s. Pretty solid. Brian Harmon, always solid here. Montgomery's 2 for 2. Eric Cole's 2 for 2. So there's a look at some of the players who have played the RSM Classic, Sea Island, pretty well. The other side of that coin, players who haven't been very good here, Joseph Bramlett. This does not feel like a very good Joseph Bramlett fit. Bramlett is long off the tee, really takes advantage with the driver. This does not promote that, so no surprise to see him there. Kevin Chappell has struggled, Dylan Fratelli. Most of these guys are driver heavy, or that's where their skill set is. So it doesn't surprise me to see some of these names here struggling. A little bit surprising to see Sepp Straka, considering he is a Georgian, or at least was a University of Georgia alum. I cannot confirm that he's a St. Simon's Island resident, but he has struggled here. Maybe a tad bit surprising. Davis Thompson has not been very good here. Let's get some more. This past week's winner, Rafael Campos, is 0 for 2. Martin Laird 0 for 3. Brandon Wu 2 for 3, but very, very poor. Ryan Armour, Davis Riley, Malnati has struggled. Streelman, Kevin Yu has struggled. So there's a few of the players that have struggled here at Sea Island. We're going to finish the show off by taking a look at Microsoft Excel. We're going to go into the early look file. And again, this is that same strokes gained total page view or tournament history tab that we just looked at for the past 5 years, where players are accruing their statistics. So if we filter on players who have played it multiple times, let's get a feel for the players who have played multiple years at Sea Island. Let's see what they're doing well. Now you see Montgomery, Ben Griffin, Eric Cole, even Adam Svensson. They've continuously played it well, but only 2 years, Svensson 3. Look how quickly you get into, say, average finishes of 40th or worse. This course is not very consistent in terms of producing results. We saw that in a great example in Mackenzie Hughes. Runner-up, miscut. Runner-up, miscut. So not a lot of consistency here at Sea Island. Off the tee, pretty hit and miss. If you go look at the players that have averaged a top 40, this is only a 0.4. Not a whole lot here. Some players have done pretty well. Svensson, Joel Damon has been off pretty well off the tee here, but Taylor Montgomery, Eric Cole have not, and they've been pretty successful here. So off the tee, not really a huge factor. The approach game, as you would expect, decent little bit here. This is a 1.6, so 4 times the emphasis as off the tee. Putting, a 1.2, but the players who have performed the ultimate best, or the ultra best, Taylor Montgomery, Adam Svensson, Denny McCarthy, Spawn to a lesser extent. Even Neesmith has been positive here in putting, so that's important to note. Damon, 2 players that are generally not very good putters, have been pretty solid here in terms of putting, so important to note that. Putting generally a pretty big deal. We move to distance, greens, fairways. Not a whole lot to be gained in distance, as you can see. This is actually a negative number. So distance really doesn't matter. Fairways doesn't look like it matters much either, as this rough isn't really all that penal. About 2 inches long is what the GCSAA lists it at. So players aren't necessarily all that afraid to be in the rough, much like they were last week at the Bermuda Championship, so long as you're in the right position to attack the green. Greens, there's a little bit to be gained here, I suppose, but we'll see tomorrow in the data dive just how much, where that data resides. Looking at birdies and bogeys, pretty darn consistent here in the bogey avoidance. Now, you don't have the spike performance of, say, an Eric Cole and the birdies gained, but, oof. I mean, this is very consistent as well. To Smalley, this is a 1.9. This is a 1.6. I'll be interested to see what the numbers say tomorrow in the Data Dive show for birdies versus bogeys. I would think it's probably bogey avoidance, because there are places where bogey can creep in if a player isn't at his best. Having said that, there are a lot of scoring opportunities, so players have to go low to contend. I can see an argument for both, and I'm curious to see what the data will say tomorrow in the Data Dive show. Moving to par 3s, 4s, and 5s. 3s is a 0.6, not really a whole lot. Par 4s are humongous. I can tell you that right now. This is a big number. This is a 3.1, 5 times the importance of the par 5s. Just, you got to play these par 4s well because there's so many of them. Only 2 par 5s. It's off your screen, but this is a 1.1. So other than Joel Damon, most of your top performers year over year at Sea Island are also taking care of the 2 par 5s. Interesting to note that the 400 to 450, let's see, 350 to 4, there's only one par 4 that falls into here. This is a 0.6. The 1.3, so double. That's what you would expect. But look at this 450 to 500. Even though there's only 2 that fall into this range, they're getting played well as well. Still, my assumption, until proven wrong, is going to be into here. And then, because we have the data, let's take a look at the proximity. And the majority of approach shots come from here. And I don't see a whole lot here. Maybe the 150 to 175. Now, Taylor Montgomery has not been good from that range, but he's been good at 125 to 150. So you can, maybe he's getting a little bit more aggressive off the tee. Maybe hitting 3 woods. Maybe hitting the occasional driver. And not worrying about this range. But the 150 to 175 looks like it would be the range of the 2. But it's not really all that great. 10.4, 17.7. So in fact, the 125 to 150 is actually a bigger number. Okay, I can see it because Ben Griffin is really not played well from that range at RSM, but everybody else has seemed to be at least somewhat, mediocre to good. Okay. But again, we'll get into more of that tomorrow in the Data Dive show. And then, of course, be on the lookout for all of the research that I'm going to post tomorrow regarding past champions of the RSM Classic, some of the patterns that they all share, and the players in the field this week who also fit those patterns. Thanks to Complex for jumping into chat. Much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. My week at the Bermuda was subpar. It wasn't a disaster by any means. I had plenty of Justin Lauer, who finished tied for 5th. Andrew Novak. I had some of these guys that played pretty well. Seamus Power had a great Sunday to turn his tournament around and kind of boost most of my lineups. I was completely wrong on Andrew Putnam. I really liked Putnam last week. He didn't play well. So some good, some bad, and we're going to try to finish 2024 off on a successful note and get ready for 2025. So thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you made this past week at the Bermuda Championship, for all the DFS contests you played this past week at the Bermuda Championship, and until I see you tomorrow for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.